Tinku saw that Aine had become a girl after entering the dormitory. He was shocked. Aine begged him not to report her, and Kisa also knelt down begging for mercy. To their surprise, Tinku took out his knife and gave it to Kisa, and instructed him to cut Aine's hair back to its former length. The kids were shocked by Tinku's decision. They thought they were finished. Shocked, Aine and Kisa looked at Tinku, asking why he was helping them when he was part of the rebels. Tinku replied, saying he was doing a favor for an old friend. In a flashback, Aine's father Jemba called someone, saying they needed to talk. It was Tinku. They were friends from long ago, along with Aine's mother. And Tinku knew about Aine, how they had changed her gender from girl to boy. Tinku and Jemba met up, and Jemba told him how Aine had seen her true self in the mirror that day, just because she was close to kissing the boy she loved. Tinku advised him to separate Aine and Kisa if they didn't want problems, because Congo was desperately looking for the girl from the prophecy. Back to the present, Tinku tells Aine that he didn't know they were going to attack their school, otherwise he would have alerted his father. Kisa finished shortening Aine's hair, but when Aine looked at the bed where she was seated, she realized she was bleeding. That abdominal pain during the training was a sign of her monthly period. All three were shocked. Aine then asked Tinku what was happening to him, why he had turned into a girl, and why he was bleeding. Tinku explained everything to him, and how he came to be raised as a boy. He asked whether he and Kisa had kissed, to which they replied yes. Tinku then explained to them that it was the reason the spell had faded. Aine was now in tears, wondering if this was going to be his life from now on. She begged Tinku to turn her back into a boy. Kisa tried comforting her. Tinku explained that to turn her back into a boy, there would have to be a sacrifice. Aine and Kisa were shocked. Do you mean there was also a sacrifice when I was turned into a boy as a baby? Who was the sacrifice? Aine asked. Tinku looked sad. Your mother. She was the sacrifice. She sacrificed herself so that you could be protected. She was given only a few days to be with you before she died. Tinku explained, looking sad. Aine cried, not believing what Tinku was telling her. Am I responsible for my mother's death? She asked, feeling guilty. No, you're not Aine. Your mother did what she had to do to protect you because she loved you so much, Tinku assured. So you knew my mother? Aine asked. Yes, I knew her like the back of my hand. But let's not talk about that. He brushed it off quickly. I have to get you a cloth to wear down there for your bleeding because we don't have pads here. You also have to cover up your tattoo with concealer so that no one sees it, plus some pills to calm down the pain, Tinku said. He told Kisa to go back to training or they would get suspicious. Kisa hugged Aine, assuring her that he would return to her as soon as possible, and went out. Do you love him? Tinku asked, looking at Aine. Yes, but I'm afraid he might not like me after what I've become, Aine replied sadly. I doubt that. He put his life on the line to save yours. He loves you, or else the magic wouldn't have faded if the love was one-sided. Tinku said, smiling. Aine smiled shyly, feeling embarrassed. Tinku left to get Aine what he had promised. Aine sat in the dormitory, still in disbelief, looking at her new body. Tinku brought everything as promised and guided her on how to put the cloth on and also wrap a cloth around her boobs to disguise them. Aine was thankful and asked Tinku why he cared so much, but Tinku brushed it off and reminded her that he was doing this for an old friend. Tinku told her that she was special and she would learn her power soon. They returned to training. Aine was still weak and found challenges while training. Congo noticed and ordered her to meet him in his office. Aine, Tinku and Kisa looked at each other in shock, hoping they hadn't been exposed. Aine entered Congo's office, shaking in fear. The office was organized, and as Aine looked up, she noticed something shocking. Her mother's portrait was hanging in Congo's office. Aine was shocked Congo caught her staring. "That's my beautiful wife. God rest her soul," Congo said. Aine was shocked. "What? That's my mother and my father's wife," she thought in her mind. He wondered what kind of lies Congo was spreading. Aine made her voice hoarse and replied, "She's very beautiful indeed." Congo studied Aine's face and asked why he fell down while training. "Because they don't need weak men here." He warned him against his behavior, saying he wouldn't be tolerant next time. Back at school, Jemba and the other parents were still sleeping in the dormitory, waiting for their children to return. Tinku had told Jemba everything, that Aine was in their camp and everything that had happened to Aine. He was shocked, feeling sad for his child. "I'm coming there, Tinku. I need to be with Aine," he said, speaking with Tinku on the phone. As he stormed out, still on the phone with Tinku, he heard someone talking on the phone in the school compound. It was Patricia. "Father, I heard Aine's father talking about a prophecy. I think he knows something. Question Aine. They're hiding something. Congo will pay us handsomely for this." As she hung up, Jemba shouted, "What? What did you say? You're the reason those poor kids were killed and our sons were kidnapped? I knew something was off about you." Tinku heard everything over the phone. Patricia and her father, the headmaster, had planned all this and sacrificed all those kids just to get money. Patricia had run off, and those rebels had intentionally let her go because she was in on the plan. Her father was taken to make people believe that he was innocent, but he was just there to collect their cash. Jemba went close and slapped her. He dragged Patricia and informed the police and all the other parents what she and her father had done. He immediately set off to find his Aine. As Aine walked out of Congo's office, the headmaster approached him, smiling. He took him aside and asked whether he and the boys had come up with any ideas to help them escape the place. Aine kept quiet for a moment, not knowing what to say. The headmaster looked at Aine, who was tense. "You have something to tell me, Aine?" he asked. "Nothing, sir," Aine replied. The headmaster knew Aine, and he immediately noticed a change in his voice and asked what was going on with him, why he had a girl's voice now, and why he looked thinner than he did when they arrived there. He grabbed Aine by the hand, and as he did, the concealer on Aine's hand rubbed off, revealing the sword tattoo. He was shocked and smiled, saying Aine would make him a lot of money tonight. Aine begged him, asking him not to tell anyone, but he didn't listen and dragged Aine, taking him to Congo's office. Before he could enter, Tinku arrived and swiftly twisted the headmaster's neck. He signaled Aine, who was extremely scared, to keep quiet. They both dragged the headmaster away before Congo or anyone else would find them. Aine cried, asking what was happening. Tinku hugged her, asking her to calm down. He told her everything about the headmaster and Patricia as he dug a grave. Aine was shocked. Tinku had saved her life again. She proceeded to ask why Congo called her mother his wife. How come? Just then, a masked man arrived, tiptoeing behind them. Aine looked shocked, alerting Tinku. "Quit it, Jemba," Tinku said. They laughed and hugged. It was Jemba, Aine's father, who had finally arrived after a long journey. Aine cried seeing her father. They hugged, both crying in disbelief. "Baba, how are you here? I missed you," Aine said. Jemba hugged her tightly, crying. "Please tell me the truth, Baba. You've lied to me all my life. I know it was to protect me, but there is more you're hiding. Why is Mama's photo in Congo's office? And why is he calling her his wife? She's your wife, isn't she?" Jemba and Tinku looked at each other suspiciously. They buried the headmaster in the forest and carefully proceeded to Tinku's house, making sure not to be seen. They entered Tinku's house and Jemba began to explain. "I have to tell you something, my child, but please don't freak out," Jemba said calmly, holding Aine's hand and applying concealer to her tattoo. "I'm not your real father, Aine." Aine was shocked. "No, that can't be true, Baba. Please tell me you're lying," she cried. She looked at Tinku and Jemba and realized they were serious. seeing the tears in their eyes. "Please don't tell me Kongo is my father. Please don't, because I'll never accept that." Aine cried at the thought of that horrible man being her father. "I'm your uncle, Aine. Your mother was my sister. I raised you as my own because your mother wanted me to, and because I love you," Jemba said, crying. Aine was in disbelief, saying it couldn't be true. Jemba was the only father she knew, and nothing could ever change that. Judging by the tears in Jemba and Tinku's eyes, she knew they weren't lying. She cried profusely, asking whether Kongo was her father. Jemba and Tinku shared glances, looking worried. "I'm your father, Aine," Tinku said, crying. Aine was shocked, looking up at Tinku and Jemba in disbelief. She remembered all the care Tinku had shown her ever since he found out her secret. "How are you my father?" Aine asked. Tinku looked sad and began to explain. "Your mother was kidnapped and brought here as a nurse. She and I were in love for years and ready to get married. But Kongo took a liking to her and snatched her from me. He forcefully married her, but she and I were still in love and continued having secret affairs. Kongo found us one day and just snapped. Your mother never slept with him since they got married, asking him for some time. So he felt betrayed that she was sleeping with me instead of him. He forced himself on her in front of me and his men, then cut open my cheek as punishment." Tinku explained, crying profusely, pointing to his scar. Aine held her hands to her mouth, crying in disbelief. Jemba also cried silently. "Your mother was already 4 months pregnant with you, Aine. That's how I know that you're my child. Kongo threatened to violate her every night if I didn't stay away from her. I always watched her from a distance. I wanted to get her out of this place. Eventually the prophecy was announced. I looked for her brother Jemba everywhere because she used to talk about him a lot until I finally found him. Your mother finally gave birth to you and you had the sword tattoo. Kongo wanted to kill you and your mother, but I managed to help both of you escape thanks to Jemba's outside help. I was caught and brought back and tortured every day by Kongo and his men, but I was thankful that you and your mother were fine. Jemba told me about your mother's sacrifice and I was heartbroken, but I knew she did it for you." Tinku narrated amidst tears. Aine was in shock and disbelief. She wanted to kill Kongo at that instant for what he had done. "I'm going to kill him," Aine said amidst tears. Jemba and Tinku told her to calm down and not make any rational decisions. As Aine stood there crying, Jemba came closer and hugged her. They both looked at Tinku, who joined them in the embrace. "So what is my special power that I will use to defeat Kongo?" she asked. "I'm not sure, but you will find out when it's time," Tinku replied. Aine showered and changed into the pads Jemba had bought for her. Both Jemba and Tinku taught her how to wear the pads. Aine was embarrassed, but Jemba and Tinku felt proud. Aine went back to the dormitory. She had been out too long, and the boys would start asking questions. She found Kisa awake, eagerly waiting for her. They hugged each other. The other boys were asleep. Aine pulled Kisa aside and told him everything that she had discovered. Kisa was shocked and comforted Aine as she cried. Later that night, as they slept, they heard a siren ringing throughout the place at 3 a.m. The rebels guarding their door woke them up, saying the traitor had been finally caught. Aine and Kisa looked at each other in shock, wondering which traitor was caught. Odoi, the dormitory captain, was missing from his bed. The boys moved out and found a crowd outside. All the men in the camp had gathered. Odoi was standing next to Kongo, as Tinku and Jemba were held down by Kongo's men after having received several beatings. Odoi had overheard Aine and Kisa's conversation that night and reported them to Kongo to win his favor. Aine shouted, crying, asking Kongo to spare them. Kongo looked at her. "I knew there was something weird about you. No wonder you were so weak," he said, and everyone laughed. "Strip her naked. We have to prove whether it's really the girl supposed to bring about the downfall of our society, Kongo ordered. Kisa stood in front of Aine, protecting her and warning Kongo's men not to touch her, but they pushed him aside and beat him up. The men grabbed Aine and rubbed the concealer off her hand, which revealed the sword tattoo. The crowd gasped, and Kongo was shocked. He ordered his men to kill Aine right then, before the prophecy could come true. Tinku shouted, freeing himself in a swift, unexpected move. He fought the men who were about to kill Aine with fierce determination. He killed them in an instant, but as he turned to finish Kongo, Kongo shot him with his gun. Jemba, Kisa and Aine cried as Tinku fell to the ground. Aine ran over to Tinku, calling him father as she cried. Tinku touched his daughter's face, smiling breathlessly. These last few days have been the best days of my life, spending them with you, being there when you got your first period. I love you, Aine. Aine cried, saying she loved him too. Tinku finally took his last breath, and Jemba and Kisa watched, crying. Aine let out a loud cry, feeling heartbroken. She had just met her biological father and experienced his love for a few days, only to have him taken from her. Kongo then ordered his men to kill Aine that instant, but Aine's sword tattoo started glowing brightly. Everyone was shocked. The men who were supposed to kill her stood back, feeling scared. Kongo shouted to kill her before things escalated, but they stood back, mesmerized by the glow. Kongo pointed his gun, ready to finish her on the spot as he cocked the gun. Aine suddenly touched her glowing tattoo, and the glowing light exploded over the place. The men screamed in pain as the light almost blinded them. Aine walked towards Kongo, who was blinded by the light, and closed her eyes as if thinking. Suddenly the light disappeared. Kongo and the men were on their knees, looking confused. Suddenly Kongo and the other men began mumbling, like they didn't know how to speak. Jemba and Kisa along with the other boys looked at the rebels in shock. Aine had erased their memory just by closing her eyes. Odoi also looked confused. He couldn't even remember his name. Jemba, Kisa and the other boys ran to Aine, asking what she had done. I gave them a fitting punishment, she said. They won't remember anything from now on. They'll only know how to breathe. Jemba looked at Aine and felt proud. I knew you had a kind heart. You wouldn't even hurt a fly. You were chosen for a reason, my girl. How did you do that? He asked. I just touched my tattoo and suddenly I was in everyone's mind. I could see everyone's thoughts. It just happened. And I knew what to do next. They can't leave this place, no matter what, until their death, she said. Aine and Jemba hugged each other, crying. Kisa joined in the hug. The rebels plus Odoi were wandering around looking confused. Aine and Jemba sat beside Tinku's body and cried. They carried him to the bus with other boys and the memoryless Odoi. He had double-crossed them, but they couldn't leave him there. Jemba drove them back to the city in silence and tears. Kisa held on to Aine. The police interrogated the boys, but surprisingly, they couldn't remember what had happened. They could only remember the day they were abducted. Aine had erased their memories too. She didn't want her secret getting out. Only she, Kisa and Jemba had all their memories, but they also pretended not to remember anything. Parents of the missing boys were happy to receive their sons back. Kisa's parents were overjoyed to see their son again. Aine, Jemba and Kisa buried Tinku next to Aine's mother. Patricia was arrested in juvie the day she was exposed. She always cried, waiting for her father to return, but sadly, he never did. Days passed, and Aine and Jemba still mourned Tinku. Aine, however, had learned to adjust to her new life as a girl. Jemba guided her in everything, teaching her how to conduct herself. In public, Aine still pretended to be a boy, but in front of Jemba and Kisa, she was a girl. As they prepared to serve food at home, the doorbell rang. It was Kisa. Aine happily opened the door and hugged him, having missed each other since Tinku's burial. They looked happy and perfect for each other. I can't believe you still love me after everything, Aine said. Kisa looked at her in shock. Of course I love you, Aine. I fell in love with your soul, not your body. You could turn into a rat. I would still love you, Kisa assured her. I love you too, Kisa, Aine said happily. They kissed each other, and it felt like magic. Jemba found them kissing, Kisa's hand on Aine's thigh, and shouted to get his hand off his daughter. He wasn't prepared for grandkids. They all laughed and sat at the dining table to eat food. In the end, Aine lived in happiness with her family and embraced her new gender and powers. She found joy in the simple moments and the love that surrounded her. Her journey had been fraught with challenges, but it led her to a place of acceptance and strength. With Jemba and Kisa by her side, Aine faced the future with hope, knowing that whatever came her way, she had the power to overcome it. The end. So guys, what do you think of this story? If you like this story, please leave a thumbs up, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you're notified every time I post new videos. Stay tuned for my next video, guys. Thank you for watching.